Season 12 class tier list for Diablo Immortal. It's time to do an updated tier list. Been a couple seasons, so if we actually take a look at it, we have Crusader, Barbarian, Demon Hunter, Wizard, Monk, and Necromancer to go through today, and we're going to be starting left to right with the Barbarian. Now, this tier list is going to be both for PvP as well as PvE. We're going to try to give them a general overall ranking instead of dividing them up like we normally do. So let's start with the Barbarian. Now, Barbarian is going straight to S tier for two reasons. One is the fastest PvE farming in the game in the overworld, hands down, easily with the new Firestorm Whirlwind build. So this is the first time that Barbarian's really just getting like pure S tier. Now that we've got the build all sorted out, it's actually ridiculous. It's easily been my fastest farming. It's very smooth. It's just an amazing build. And it's only continually gotten better. Okay, so in PvE, it's going to get an S tier. It's also going to be getting an S tier in PvP because both with the new 10 versus 10 for the Accursed Towers PvP, as well as the original Battlegrounds, Barbarian is amazing there because it's all about objectives and holding certain areas. And so having the Undying Rage where you can stay alive longer is just really good in basically all forms of PvP in the game. Plus the damage is good, etc., etc. So Barbarian is just pretty much double S tier at the moment, hands down. Obviously a good class. It does take some time to get up to, so if you're just starting the game, it does feels a little weaker. Give it some time. Once you have all the pieces put together, that class really starts to come together. Now, coming to Crusader, I do believe Crusader in a party is an S tier. In a solo gameplay, it is A tier for PvE. However, in PvP, it's probably an A tier as well. I normally would put it to S tier because of the Conjuration of Light, but I don't think that's enough just to carry it at the moment. So I believe Crusader as an overall ranking would be an A tier. If we were just talking PvE, I would put it S tier. If we were just talking PvP, I would put it like A tier. However, as a mix between the two, I think A tier is fairly safe at the moment. Now, Crusader could use still a little bit of love, in my opinion. Some of the moves are a little bit clunky. I would like to see some fixing that I've already talked about in other videos, like the Grim Cackler's Dawn, to allow that to be able to use off of the Conjuration of Light, or when you actually have a shield up to have that work properly, etc. However, that still has not been fixed. Now, I do think the cursed items are maybe kind of okay on the Crusader, considering shield, etc. You compare that with the Dawn and the block, etc. And I could see that the cursed items being all right on the Crusader. However, I think the cursed items are a little bit of miss on most classes. So I don't think the cursed items really changed a whole lot for people in terms of where the actual tier list is on each one of these classes. Now, going to the Demon Hunter, I'm actually just going to put them in a B and arguably maybe even a C. Here's the thing. Originally, the reason that we really liked the Demon Hunter was the fact that the Demon Hunter was extremely high damage, high single target damage, good on bosses, good in PvE dungeons. And in the beginning with the harassment, etc., Demon Hunter was quite proficient in the Battlegrounds early. However, as time has come around, it is obvious the Demon Hunter is probably the weakest of all classes in PvP at the moment. And so for that reason, it gets a very bad rating in PvP, a C or a D rating. In PvE, it doesn't really give anything to the party other than like cracking armor, one weakness essence it has that really benefits the party as a whole. I feel like it's a fairly selfish class, whereas most of the other classes at least have something that can benefit the party, and the only thing you're really contributing is damage. Well, in PvE, damage isn't really an issue. You can get damage from any of the classes if you just get a build correctly, and so for that reason, for me today, I'm not really very excited when I play the Demon Hunter because the only thing I'm contributing is damage, which is maybe the least important thing currently in the game in both PvE and PvP. So I'm not really a huge fan of the Demon Hunter in its current state. I think it could use a little bit of love. Now, if we're going to Monk, I believe the Monk is S tier, primarily because it's still completely busted in PvP, has the highest like ranged damage move in the game, even though it is a melee class with Shimmerlin, which is pretty crazy. The burning helps it as well because it counts as continual damage. It has good PvE combos and actually feels quite fast and efficient to use on PvE and things like challenge rifts. I actually think Monk is both fun to play as well as extremely strong, and I think it can farm at a fairly fast pace in PvE. It can also continually dominate in PvP where kills matter and things like the Battlegrounds. Good in Rights, good in Battlegrounds. It's going to be okay in the new 10vt, 10 PvP mode, but mostly it's about getting kills and doing significant damage. And because of its strength in PvP, it's going to skyrocket itself to the top of the tier list today because of how important that actually is in this state of the game. PvP is getting more important, not less at the moment. So at the moment, Monk is absolutely going to be S tier just across the board. Very, very strong class. Also, a lot of the sets work quite good on it, like Mountebanks works good on it. The Gloom works amazing on it. I think the new Poison Rage set might actually work a little bit due to the fact of how Shimmerlin works. So I'm actually, I'm a pretty big fan of the Monk. I'm also a fan of in how fun it is to play in PvE. Like, it's not just a good class, it's actually quite an enjoyable class. And if you're playing on PC, you get like a very strong advantage. It also has a lot of invulnerability frames built into the Monk, which makes it very frustrating to play against in PvP. And if there's any lag or ping issues, etc., very often you can die before you even know the Monk is even on you. And that is part of the reason the Monk gets such a high rating, is because of its maneuverability. Now, the Necromancer I'm going to put to A tier. It is arguable that the Necromancer is S tier. The only reason I'm putting it at A tier is because it is more of a CC type of row. It doesn't have the damage the Monk type it does. Like, the Monk will basically just kill you, whereas the Necromancer will CC you for a while, and the Necromancer has to still be strong in order to have sort of the damage type of advantage. I do believe that the Necromancer is quite good in PvP. That was my first class I used, and it was very efficient then. It's still very efficient now. The zero damage or the CC full build with the fear and the knockups, etc., are actually quite good. I think it's good for the new 10 versus 10 as well. I also believe that in PvE, the Necromancer is still sort of a staple. I believe he still has the highest single target damage in the game with the faux summon build, and with the new cursed gear, the summon builds are arguably one of the better received out of the cursed gears, as the vexed summons are pretty significant damage with that roar. It's like 130%. And so for that reason, the Curse Gear actually does a little bit better on the Necromancer than I feel like a good chunk of the other ones do. And you can also double dip for things like primary attack, etc. So for me personally, the Necromancer is actually quite a good class at the moment, both in PvE and PvP. Now, I have played a lot of Monk, Barbarian, and Necromancer in PvP, and I definitely felt the strongest as a Barbarian, because I believe the Barbarian is stronger when you're weaker, whereas the Necromancer, if you're falling behind or you're weaker than like a really strong person, you actually feel that a lot, whereas the Barbarian, you still feel just as useful with 1 HP as you do with 500,000 HP. You still feel like as strong. So that is one reason that Necromancer isn't the same tier as Barbarian on this list when we're talking about PvP. In terms of PvE, the Necromancer is going to overworld farm slower, but it is much better in things like single target damage. So like Heliquary bosses, dungeon bosses, etc. The Necromancer is actually going to do better. So it is debatable that the Necromancer is S tier. But for the sake of what I truly believe, I think the Necromancer is somewhere around A tier at the moment. And that's a fine position for it to be. I think maybe if there was like an A+, I would put it slightly above the Crusader, but the Crusader has some things that the Necromancer just can't contribute in terms of PvP survivability, and for that reason, the Crusader stays up there. So that leaves us down to the Wizard. Now, the Wizard is the class that I am actually currently playing. If I show you just real quick here, you can see I'm currently playing the Wizard, and I've actually farmed basically all of the essences for this class at the moment. There's only a couple that I don't have, but I've got all these guys here. You see, I haven't got that one, but for the most part, I've got pretty much all these essences. I've been trying all of these guys out, and I'm at the point with the Wizard where I truly believe the Wizard is quite good. I believe in PvE, it actually has some insane continual damage and is very strong with a full continual damage build with things like the Poison Rage type of build, as well as a Grace set. You can do like a 2-piece Poison, 4-piece Grace, which is very efficient. And in PvP is quite strong as well because of the freeze potential. It allows you to continually freeze and CC people. There's Black Hole. There's a lot of CC type of potential. I think at a minimum, it's as good as Crusader in PvP. Arguably could be S tier. I do think it's right around its usefulness of Necromancer in PvP. It's arguable the Necromancer is slightly better, just from my personal experience. However, I think this is what it looks like at the moment. I think A tier is where most of the classes are sitting. Barbarian and Monk seem to be just a step above, primarily in PvP, but the Barbarian itself would just be A tier if it didn't also have that huge step above in PvE as well as PvP. And then the Monk is just so far above in PvP that it's sort of pushing it above all of the other classes in particular. And then we have Demon Hunter just at a gap where unfortunately it could use a little help. Now, these aren't supposed to be the be-all, end-all, everything. And this is just how I'm feeling in Season 12 at the moment, but I've played all of these classes now multiple times. I've done it in PvP and PvE, and I'm not exactly like a 7,000 resonance person where everything really feels strong in PvP, etc. So I definitely am feeling where the lack of power is in PvP as well as in PvE, and so that's currently where my rankings are. But let me know how you guys are feeling about the classes, which class you're enjoying the most, and if you're looking for any other guides, I'll have a playlist link right here that has all of the class guides available.